Well, I'd like to introduce you to Matt. He's going to introduce himself and tell you all about him and all his credentials, and look forward to this. And he'll tell you how he wants to manage questions as he goes through. So over to you, Matt.
All right, good evening. Can everyone hear me okay?
Perfect.
Yeah, great stuff. And can you see a blue screen with some words on it on your screen? Is that sharing correctly? Yeah, sweet. Okay, great stuff. As Dave said, my name's Matt, and I work in the outdoors full time. I run a business with my partner. Well, I say my partner, but my partner. And yeah, we do all sorts of stuff. So we do sea kayakers, whitewater kayakers, open canoe. We kind of do a lot, really. And we provide quite a lot of the British Canoeing Awards, certification, leadership awards, and we also provide the guide training module. So this module that you're on, we work on those as well. So hopefully I can link in quite nicely with the stuff that Dave's been doing with you. How's things been going so far on the online program? Has it been?
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, it's been working.
Yeah, for these modules anyway.
A lot of us think it's better than being, having to drive miles and go to a place and have it all jammed in a day. So I think it's really good.
Yeah, great. And I believe that some of you have done multiple modules. So this is the leadership one, but you've also been involved in the trip planning module and the customer experience module. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, sweet. Okay, cool. Just as a quick start for me, it'll be really useful. Before when I had this on, it had your names on the screen, and now I can't see you. Oh, right. When you talk, your name comes on. It'd be really useful for me to get a little bite-sized bit of information about what discipline you're coming from, because that can help me if I'm giving some examples to target, where people are at with. So if you wouldn't mind doing Northern Lights. Oh, how very nice. If you wouldn't mind doing a quick. I've not got a name, so I can't even call out someone's name to give me a bit of an intro. Yes, Dave.
Matt, if you look in the top right-hand corner, does it say speaker's view or
gallery? You want gallery?
You want gallery.
Yeah, I'm on the one where I've got multiple.
Okay, and the names aren't coming up in the bottom corner.
No, when someone speaks, their name shows up. It might be because I'm sharing the screen, maybe.
Don't know. Okay, sorry.
All right. Well, here we go. Let's do this a little bit different. A quick show of hands. Who here is a whitewater kayaker predominantly? So they're doing this to gain a guide award from a whitewater kayaking point of view. Who have we got? Yeah, a couple of folks. What about
open whitewater sea kayak open boat?
Multiple. Okay, so that's Mark, isn't it? I saw your name then.
Yeah.
So you're a multi guy, and I
was
going to say
too, then, Matt, as well.
Sorry, say again.
Sorry, I'm multiple as well. I'm doing my sea kayak and open and whitewater.
Cool, and it's Joe, isn't it?
Yep, great.
Cool. Anybody else? Just a quick show of hands. Anyone else? A multidiscipline person who's looking to do some guiding across all different disciplines within. Yeah, cool, great stuff. Anyone here just a sea kayaker? No. Anyone here? Oh. Anyone here just a open canoeist? Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Great stuff. That just gives me a bit of an idea where we're at with stuff. What I'm going to talk to you about, what we're going to have a conversation about tonight, is a subject which is called situational awareness, and it links really closely with decision making. So I think a lot of the things that we talk about, that there can be some parallels drawn with those things you've already been discussed with Dave, and I guess some of the stuff that got brought up before during the mountain rescue talk. It's a topic which is it's a big interest to me because I've just completed a master's program, and as part of that master's that I did, my dissertation, my thesis was on this subject, and it was on how we can improve the situational awareness of, in this case, it was sea kayak guides. But you know what? All these things we talk about tonight are fully transferable to whitewater kayaking, open canoeing, stand-up paddleboarding, working in the mountains, working gorge walking, coast steering, whatever it is. They're all super transferable concepts and themes that we're going to look at. It would be really good if we could have some interaction, but I know that because we're not in the same room, it's hard to judge when one person speaks, and sometimes you get multiple people who speak, and it's no one's fault, but we end up talking over each other. So if you've got a question, or I'm talking about something you've got a question about, if you can just kind of acknowledge it by, give me a wave, then I'll address that question there and then. And there will be time at the end as well for us to take kind of questions as a whole. But if you want to ask a question on something there and then, please feel free to do so, and I'll do my best to get it answered for you. Does that make sense for everybody? Yeah, cool. All right, great stuff. Right then, on to it then. So this subject, situation awareness, I guess this is probably the first question that some people might be asking. What is it? And it looks a bit strange here because I've put what is situation, and then I've got AL as brackets. Sometimes you see it referred to as situational awareness, but I believe the right grammatical slant on it is situation awareness rather than situational awareness. So if I give you a bit of background on it, it's an academic subject area that's been studied since about the 1980s. But obviously, stuff I'll talk about now, you'll go, well, we do that sort of stuff anyway when we're working with groups, or when I'm crossing the road, or when I'm playing sport, or whatever it might be. But the first research that was done into it involved aviation, involved pilots, and they were the first ones who coined the term situational awareness. They said that they had SA when they were out flying. They were aware of all these different elements that were coming in. And since then, there's been a lot of research done in air traffic control, because obviously they're dealing with a very dynamic environment. They've got lots of planes in the air, and they've got a time when things are coming in, and think about altitudes and all those different things. It also, there's quite a bit of research done on it to do with the military, and quite topically, there's been quite a bit of research to do with, well, not just the NHS, but in this case, the NHS and emergency rooms and trauma, and how consultants, doctors and nurses make decisions based on the information they gather through having this situational awareness. So if you want the proper definition, it's there, but I can understand why why we'd go, whoa, that's a bit of a meaty thing. So the proper definition is, it's the perception of environmental elements and events with respect to time or space, the comprehension of their meaning, and the projection of future status. If that means nothing to some people, then you're in the right room, because I think it's quite a wordy explanation. So if you looked at some of the academic papers, this is what you'd see. But I guess if we said to ourselves, what does that mean for us as paddle sport leaders, paddle sport guides, we can break it down pretty simply into these three areas. If you were to talk to somebody,
Matt,
yes, please.
I stuck my hand up, but I don't know whether you saw it.
Oh, I've not put everybody on the screen. Sorry.
So I'm sort of quite surprised that you limit it to environmental, because in my book, situation analysis also includes very much participant analysis and the people you're leading, an awareness of them, not just the environment.
Great. All right. Brilliant question. Who was it that asked that one? I can't. That's why I've not got a photo. I've not got a moving image. It's a nice photograph. I'm just going to go back up to this bit. Yeah. So when they say perception of environmental elements, so it is the perception of environmental elements and events with respect to time and space. Now, when they talk about that, they would lump into that not environmental doesn't necessarily mean waves or moving water or weather conditions or wind speed or those things. It's to do with everything that's involved within that environment. So that for us would definitely be about the people, and that's a really important point you've made there, that just being aware of what let's use the word conditions rather than environment if we're talking about waves and water and wind and those things. So we've got to be aware of the conditions, but then we've also got to be aware of how people interact within those conditions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I can understand that there's different ways of interpreting things, but yeah, I just think that the focus here is too much on the environment, not enough on the people. But hey, yeah, I can understand you can make it include the people, but yeah, no problem.
Yeah, this here is the textbook definition of the subject area. This isn't what I'm saying. I believe this is. What I'm going to go on to now. This part here, this bit here is the bit that incorporates that stuff you're talking about. So if we were to say to ourselves, if we had to rank ourselves or rate our personal levels of situation awareness, well then, according to the research, and I'll keep underpinning it with that, then we could be one of three levels. We could be at level 1. And what level 1 would mean is that we have the ability to perceive what's going on. So we have the ability to observe and see that something's happening in front of us. It could be that we're on a river and there's some sort of flow of water and it's going white. Yeah, whatever that might mean, we can see that that's happening. If I questioned you on it, or if you questioned a member of your group on it, and you said, "What's going on here?" and they said, "Well, the water's all white and bubbly," well, that would mean that they are displaying this first level of awareness. They're aware that it's there. But what we need as guides and leaders is we need to go beyond that perception, and we need to work into that kind of comprehension and definitely for us into this next part of this projection. So when it comes to the comprehension element, what we're saying is we can see that this is happening, level 1, but level 2 is we know why this is happening. So we've got an understanding of why that particular thing is looking the way that it is. So that could be to do with water depth, could be to do with water speed, could be to do with hazards in the rock, could be to do with the shape that it's making. On the sea, it could be to do with wave height, wave shape, frequency, all those different things. It could be about those. Or it could be that we've been looking and we've been watching our group interact, and we've got somebody who keeps making personal decisions about their paddling that maybe aren't totally helpful to the group. And we might see that they keep paddling away, but if we understand it and we can comprehend what's going on, then from a personal level, we might be able to say that person keeps paddling away or doing their own thing. That could be through anxiety or nerves and the fact that they don't want to stop because they think if they stop moving, then they're more at risk of capsize, or if they just keep plowing on, then they'll get to the beach or get to the end of the river or the lock or whatever it is quicker. So us having an understanding of what the person is like, but also what the environment's like, that would mean that we're working in this level 2 zone of situation awareness. If we are really performing well and we're able to get into this top bracket, which I would imagine most of you guys are already working in. It doesn't matter what environment, whether it's a flat water canal or whether it's a section of grade 5 or whether it's advanced sea conditions. These things still apply no matter what environment you're working in. But if we can now say we can see it and we understand it, and then we can say we can project what that means for me and for my group and for maybe the remainder of the day, then that means that we are working at a level of this, according to the research, at a level 3 zone of situational awareness. So I've put some little words next to it there. If we're working in this perception, we know what's going on, Comprehension, we're able to say, yes, so what? What's the reason behind that? And then this projection is, now what? So that could be that we understand that this person who keeps paddling away, well, actually, given the environment we're in, it's not a problem if they paddle 50 meters ahead of us, because they're in open space. And if they do have a capsize, we can get there and we can deal with the problem. It could be that they're on a river and they're paddling away and we're losing them off round corners and it's splitting the group up and it's causing a problem. So being able to project that could be an issue further down the line is really important. From an environmental point of view, being able to project what's going on and say, right, I can see the way this wave is moving, I can see the way the water's flowing, I can see what's downstream, I can see how the group have been interacting. Maybe this isn't a good idea if we do this particular section, if we use this rapid, if we use this rock hop, whatever it might be. Does that make sense? So we've got three levels in which we can work at: perception, comprehension, and projection. If we're doing a good job, we've probably got all three of those things happening simultaneously. All right. So how is it relevant? It's a really, seems like a really obvious question, but it's super relevant really for us as leaders and guides. I guess, are most people here, because you don't necessarily have to be, but are most people here already holding some sort of leadership award and they are responsible for taking people out, or are some people doing this for additional knowledge and information? Quick show of hands, who's already a leader? Oh, quite a few. Okay, cool. That's great. And then for those who are not, have you got aspirations of going to do leadership qualifications? Or, yeah, thumbs up, this is good. It's so difficult not having you in the room. Great stuff. So we've got to say to ourselves, why might this stuff be really important for us? Well, when I did this master's program, we looked at what people's levels of awareness were like, and then there was a link made then to the decision-making process. And there's a slide later on which says that situation awareness is not decision-making and decision-making is not situation awareness. And that's really an important distinction to make. It's having high levels of this situation awareness, which means that we can make effective decisions later on. So if we were out leading a group and it was a familiar stretch of river, and we got into that mindset of saying, oh, well, I come here every week, so it's just going to be the same, and I'm just going to lead my group down like I always do, and I'm not going to really be aware of what's going on, or maybe I had a heavy night on the beer last night and I feel a bit groggy today, and it's at times like that we're going to make poor decisions. Maybe even the fact that we're getting on the river or getting on the sea or the lake, whatever it might be, could be a poor decision in itself. But if we're not fully aware of everything that's going on around us, the people and the environment, well, then it's going to impact on our decision making. And then for us as guides, it's going to potentially put people in harm's way, isn't it? And I know you already all do this, but I'm just backing up the underpinning side of things. These are the reasons why. If we're going to become adaptable leaders and guides, so we're able to work in different environments with different people, and we're able to handle the different things that get thrown at us. If we want to be able to do all that, yeah, which is what I think we're all aiming for. We all want to be good. If we're going to be guides and leaders, we want to be good guides and leaders, I guess. Well, if we want to be good at this, well, then we need to be able to do this. We need to be able to make effective decisions. The only way we're going to make effective decisions is by us having this, which is this high levels of situation awareness. If we don't have these high levels, we can't make effective decisions. You've been doing some stuff already on decision making, I believe. Is that right? Yeah. So what sort of things have come up as discussion points when you've been talking about making effective decisions? Anyone?
Well, so some of the things we've talked about, Matthew, have been associate with how decisions are made with groups, for example. So how you syndicate decisions sometimes and get buy-in to decisions. Not necessarily the actual nuts and bolts of what evidence you use to actually do the analysis for a decision, but also how you involve other people to get them committed to a decision.
Yeah, and thinking about those different elements of leadership, whether we're using some kind of transactional mode of leadership where we're just giving that information, or whether there's a little bit of collaboration with what's going on, like you say, getting some buy-in. I think that's a really important phrase, because we could make decisions by saying, I'm the leader, I know best, you do this, go. And that's a leadership model, isn't it? I'm not saying it's the best one, but in certain situations, you being in charge and making those decisions and saying, do this because you've got to do it, and being very dictatorial is very useful. If we were in an incident management situation, well then we're not going to explore different options. Oh, how might we best save this person who's stuck in a boat and pinned on a rock? Let's explore different things. We've not got the time, and it's not appropriate to do that. So we have to make some, hard and fast decisions, and that's when buy-in is irrelevant. That's where you have to step up and say, look, I've got the experience, I've got the technical know-how and understanding, and I'm going to do that. Yeah, great. It's a really good point. That what other things have come up regarding decision making?
The type of leader that you are as well, I guess. We were talking earlier about leadership styles. I guess that has something to do with it.
Yeah, and in what? Yeah, was it your name? Was it Kristen? Sorry, I see your name. Kirsten. Sorry. So go on, give me a little bit more information about that, then, Kirsten, because that's interesting stuff. That.
Got myself in it now, haven't I? I guess where I'm coming from, we were talking about earlier about laissez-faire sort of leadership, or very controlling. I'd probably question whether I won't say you won't have a situational awareness for laissez-faire, but I guess you might not be as comprehended as much, maybe, whereas someone who's very controlling might have even less, because they're more worried about controlling the group and might miss something that's going on around them. I don't know. Interesting.
I'm glad you said that final bit, that exerting total control can sometimes means that you get a bit tunnel vision, don't you? And you're really focusing on something, and you're not necessarily taking in the environment, but that's not always true. What could be really important is that if maybe we're taking that, and you use the phrase laissez-faire, that kind of, yeah, you know what, we'll have a bit of give and take, a bit of flow. It might be that because you've been aware of everything that's going on, you've made the decision based on everything that you're seeing to operate like that. That could be a decision that you've made, rather than a leadership style that you always adopt. It could be something that in that moment you've gone, you know what, I'm going to give you a little bit because I know we're in a safe environment, but then when we get somewhere that's a little bit more, the consequences are a little bit higher, I'm going to drag it in and I'm going to change, because it's a spectrum, isn't it, that we can operate on for that leadership stuff. We're not always one or the other. Yeah, I'm not sure what your name is, but you've got your hand up. Lady at the bottom. Yes, you.
Oh, yeah, it's Vicky.
Vicky.
I shall make Dave happy. We weren't necessarily covering it in this module, but last week, customer experience, linking on to what Kirsten said as well about reacting to the situation, is about their customers' expectations as well. You've got to take what they want to get out of it into account. It's like, okay, so why are they here? Why am I here? So what do I need to decide based on all of that, plus nobody dying, etc., etc.
Yeah, brilliant. Because actually, this module you're doing is a guide module, and there's a reason that they use that terminology, guide, because you're not an instructor, and you're not, the person who's out at the front. You're there to provide an experience, aren't you? And that experience has got to encompass lots of different elements, and to do that, we've got to take into account the different members of the group, and as best as we can, we've got to give the people what they want. But obviously, there are limitations to that, because we can't always give everyone everything all the time. But yeah, if we're taking into account the individual needs or the collective needs of the groups and their wants, well, then we're able to make some decisions that are based around that, that are going to give them a good time. And we might walk away and go, well, that wasn't a very exciting trip that I just did. But they might walk away going, my God, that was the most exciting thing I've ever done. So the levels are slightly different, aren't they, sometimes based on our experience levels and what we bring towards it. So it's a really good point, that, Vicky, and to bring that in from the customer experience module. Great stuff. Any other thoughts on that before I move on? Was there a hand?
Yeah.
The guy with the cue in the background. Sorry, I'm it's really hard to see. It's Craig.
Right. Craig. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what I've seen so far of what you've put up about situational awareness would seem to me that it is the overarching and umbrella to all the things that we've done so far. It is like, what Vicky's just said with customer care, with the leadership, it would depend on what kind of style you change to, you adapt, you choose. The trip planning in the organisation, the campcraft and expedition, it is just like that umbrella area. I mean, it might be blown out of the water in the next 10 slides. I don't know, but I mean, that's where it seems to be at the moment.
Yes, you're totally correct. It's I want to say it's important for all those things that you've just mentioned, but I don't. I like the idea of it being like an umbrella, because I guess we need to be fully aware all of the time, don't we? If we transported this into the healthcare sector, well, the stuff that they'd be talking about would be, and it's super topical at the moment, being on an ICU ward, they'd be on about being aware of all these different things that are going on with that person in the bed, and if they notice slight changes in, I don't know, I'm not a medic, but blood pressure or slight changes in breathing rate or oxygen rates or something like that, well, then they're not just able to go, oh, that's changed. They're able to go, that's changed. That's the trend that it's on. Therefore, skipping ahead, that could mean that this is where they're heading, so let's do something about it now. And that's the same if we go back into the outdoor setting, is that if we think about most incidents that happen in the outdoors, or, let's take capsizes, that not always super serious, but if we take a capsize, for example, well, most people will say, if we said, what happened there? What was the problem? They'd go, oh, well, Jeff capsized. But actually, the capsize probably is just the result of accumulation of bad decisions. Maybe if we'd have made some better judgments right at the start of the day or an hour before, when we noticed that he was looking a bit wobbly, or he didn't really want to get stuck into that rapid, or he was crossing eddy lines a bit gingerly, or at the start of the day he wasn't wearing the right clothes, or there could be if we backtrack and look at it, there could be an accumulation of lots of little decisions that maybe we haven't noticed and been aware of that culminated in this person capsizing. But we say the problem was they capsized. Actually, the problem was probably much, much further back. So having that awareness and that bird's eye view almost of everything that's going on, and helps you to make those decisions, like we said, but then can often result in preventing problems rather than you having to decide how you're going to cure those things. That's just my thoughts on it. Cool. Any other thoughts or any other questions about that before we?
I just like how people capsize. It's part of their experience building,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Alan. It was Alan. I think I just about caught the name. It flashed up very briefly. Yeah. I often talk about with my groups, or when I do coach out or leadership stuff, and we don't always necessarily want to encourage people to. I remember when I first started out, like, we used to get in a kayak and they'd go, right, do a capsize, and you'd be freezing cold before the day had even started, and it was just like a really negative experience. But actually, the process of being involved in those things, both as a let's call them a victim, a casualty, a victim, and being a rescuer, are really important, aren't they? And to be an active victim and someone who can help is really good. And if you've never capsized, or you've never taken a swim, well, then maybe you don't fully know how to be a useful person in the water. So yeah, I hear what you're saying, Alan. It's all part of generating experience.
I always remember being on a
It's just
sea
how
kayak.
we package.
Yeah, I always remember being on a sea kayak trip. It was actually circumnavigating Isla, and a lady went in. There was boomers coming in. A lady went in, and she'd never been in the water before in all her training, and so she'd never been rescued back into the boat. And actually, all fooled me for I'd paddled with her loads of times before, but not to know that she'd never experienced a wetting in serious anger was quite an issue. I was going to ask something else, Matt, actually, which was, I come from a commercial background, and situation analysis in the commercial background is very strategic, and it's actually all the internal and external factors. So it's part of your strategic planning is you need to understand your own capabilities, so the leader's capabilities, the group's capabilities. It's not just the outside. And I get a feeling that the outdoors, a lot of people just think it's just it's what the outside's chucking at you. A bit similar to my previous comment. I think it's just as important to be thinking about the inside stuff.
Alan, I've had a conversation 2 days ago with one of our members about this, and talking about whether his question to me was whether I ever worry about capsizing, falling in when I'm leading and looking after groups. And I said, well, it doesn't. I'm not always thinking about it. I think that's a bad mindset to be in. But there are times. You've just talked about Islay. The example I gave him was we led a Dutch group around Islay summer before last, and I tell you what, it looks on the map, it looks like a nice island, but there are some parts of that are super remote, and if it goes wrong, you're in serious trouble. It's an amazing trip, but we found ourselves in some moments where we went, if it goes wrong here, this is pretty serious. And there are moments where it ticks over your mind, and you almost have to just self-confirm. Hang on a minute, I'm good at this. I know that I'm okay. My job to look after the group. But like you say, if ever I was thinking I'm not comfortable here, well then I've made a bad choice. I'm in the wrong environment, and I can't look after my group effectively because I'm looking after myself.
Yeah.
And it needs to be pretty autonomous from my point of view, and just deal with the clients, students, whatever it might be. So it's a really good point you've raised there, Alan. Yeah, nice. Cool. Okay, great. I'm loving it.
Dave's trying to catch your attention, isn't he?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go, Dave.
Yeah, I think I'm sure you can agree, Matt, that most of the stuff that we cover on the guide modules are really to encourage situational awareness, whether it's through the pre-planning at the time, the customer care. It is all about being more aware of the situation we find ourselves in as the guide.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and we'll talk about it in a moment when I mention some of the findings that I got from the research that I did. But you'd expect that that's just a given, that people are doing that, but it's actually surprising how many people just shut off and they just go through the motions and they see what they want to see. So yeah, you're right. It underpins a lot of this stuff that we talk about.
Matt, is that Leotard?
Sorry, sir, I missed that then. Someone.
Is that the Ridgely attack? No, it's Sullivan.
No, that's Sullivan, yeah. We did a trip last year. These are the same Dutch guys that we took around Islay the year before. We did a summer house trip with them this summer, and it was beautiful. It was too hot. I'm ginger originally, and I've got no hair, so I'm on full factor 50 all the time. Beautiful. Yeah, but we just got that view for the entire trip because it was just on our right hand side as we made our way up the coast. Yeah, beautiful. Good spot, Dave. Love it. 2 points.
You must be about near Oldney Island there.
Yeah. And then we took a trip around Handa. Beautiful little island. Amazing bird colony there.
Yeah, good ski stack.
Yeah, it was lovely. Yeah. Stoy. Follow the story.
Oh, man ahoy.
No, store.
Oh yeah, the head.
Yeah. I can't remember. Yeah.
Oh, it's gone.
I'm saying store, but store. Is it store? It'll
Yeah,
come
store
to me.
point.
Yeah, beautiful. There were some climbers on the. Thought, oh, no thanks. Just waves crashing against it, just on the headland. Cool. I threw this in, but we've already kind of talked about some of this stuff. I don't know whether you've touched on this or whether it's something you've even touched on at all. But if we're thinking about some of that decision-making stuff, then it could fall into two of these different categories. One thing I was saying to Dave before we all came online is that I've got a bunch of documents. I've put them all together in a folder, and I don't know what the best way of getting them to you, whether it's send them to you, Dave, or I know there's a chat function on here where I can upload files. I don't know what the best option is. You can let me know that, but I'll send you through a bunch of articles that relate to all this stuff that we've been talking about tonight, and you can bore yourself and help yourself get to sleep with some of those things while away those lockdown hours. But this stuff that we've been talking about, this one versus the other, and it shouldn't really be a case of that, but we've got this classic decision making which falls into this slow time stuff, and examples of that are things like route planning and how we select the appropriate venue and all those things that we can do that take a little bit of time, and we've got maybe some more tools at our disposal to help us make those decisions. Whereas often the stuff that we find when we're out working with groups is more on the right hand side, more or less naturalistic decision making, they call it. So it's things that are happening in the moment, and we've got to make judgments, and we've got to make some decisions about things that are going on right there and then. And it might fly in the face of our plan, but it's something that we've got to do. So the example I give there are, if an incident happens, well then we don't have time to sit around and chat about it. We've got to just get it done. We've got to get the person back in the boat, get the person out of the water, whatever it might be. We can't make these decisions, especially these naturalistic decisions at this end of the spectrum. We can't make those properly unless we're aware of everything that's going on. There's another amazing subject that we definitely aren't going to touch on, but it's a subject that's called heuristics, and you've probably all heard the word before. I'll drop in an article about that as well, but the fact that we create these rules of thumb that help us to fast track towards these decisions are really useful, but they're also potentially full of traps that can cause us a problem. And it often means that we make these kind of suboptimal decisions. So the thing that does the job at the time, if we look back, we might be able to say, maybe we could have done this and it would have got a slightly better result, or it could have got the person out of the water slightly quicker, or we could have got to the beach slightly quicker, or at the time, what we're looking to do is just make a judgment call, which means that we get the best result that we can at that moment in time. So I'll drop some information about that if it's of interest to anybody. You can have that, and there's some more reading for you to do there. Any questions about that before I move on? I didn't really want to spend too much time on it, but great, cool. All right, so this is maybe something that we're interested in. So, how do I improve my situation awareness? Anyone got any thoughts on how they might improve their situation awareness?
Try and slow down.
Oh, yeah. Brilliant point. Yeah. Slow down. Yeah. Give yourself time. Yeah, that's a great point.
It increases your focus, and if you're prepared as well, then when things come up, then it's not so much of a shock to the system that you are planning to prepare.
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say reflective practice in terms of, after the event, actually thinking back to what your situation analysis sort of had helped you to do. Or the other thing is, use a mentor or somebody that you really trust to talk about what they're thinking about it at the same time as you.
great. And you've hit the nail on the head there. That someone you trust and that is good at what they do. I've seen people get into mentoring relationships before with somebody who would go, "Oh no, you don't want to be you don't want to be listening to that." But yeah, someone you trust and someone who you know is doing a good job. And Craig, you said about being prepared and bringing in kind of those previous experiences and those and that linked in with what Alan had said there to do with reflective practice and thinking about what's happened in the past. Yeah, they're really important things for us. If we take the evidence and the research that goes behind this, well, and these are some of the findings that we got from my study that I did, were that these three things were the areas that people, I don't want to say failed because that's not fair for me to say that, but it's the things that people demonstrated the least well. That's the most unintelligent phrase I've ever come up with. But they didn't do a good job with these things. They didn't do a good job with something that we call observational cues, and I'll talk about these in detail in a moment. So they didn't do a very good job at observational cues. They didn't do a very good job at what we call coupling this perception and action, and I'll talk about that as well. And they didn't really have any adaptability in the way they were thinking about things. And these three things are really, really important to being effective people, effective coaches, leaders, guides, whatever it is we might be, personal performers within the outdoors. So what do I mean by these things? Well, observational cues, they're things that you see that maybe as a novice, if it was one of your first times in a boat. Let me think of an example that everyone might be able to think. Okay, right, the first time you ever get on a river, or the first time you stand next to a river and you notice that something's happening when the water hits a rock and it goes around a corner, and there's something happening behind the rock, and then at some parts there's a shape to the water as it flows between two bodies and it gets a bit deeper. All those things that we would look at as absolute novices and go, oh, well, that's a river. But as a more experienced person, we're looking at the little detail, and those observational cues are those little tiny bits of detail that we see that give us information. Now, that could be environmental information, like I just described there, or it could be that we see somebody at the start of the day who they're on the beach, they're packing their boat, and they just keep looking out to sea. And they're looking out and they just look like they're not happy with everything that's going on. They've not said anything, but they just keep looking out as if to go, that looks a bit too rough for me today. That is an observational cue. Something that you see that you go, right, I've seen it, I've got to do something with that. It's information that you've gathered. So the participants in the study that we did, their observational cue recognition wasn't amazing. It wasn't amazing. Perception and action, basically what we're saying here is that they can predict, or they can see, or they can say what would happen or could happen, and then whether that thing that they think is going to happen, does it link to what actually happens? So are those things working together, or are they, what they're seeing and what actually happens, are they just two totally different worlds? Because that's really common, that you talk to people and you say, what's going on here? And they say, oh, this, and this. And what's going to happen to your boat? Well, if I go there, it's going to end up on the right. And they get on the river and the boat ends up over on the left, and they go, I don't know how that happened. Whereas you get somebody who's really good at coupling that perception and action. You know, right, I know what's going to happen now. I'm going to bounce down here. That wave is going to push me over to the right, and then I'm going to have to accelerate and get across the edge. And then when they get on the river, that's exactly what they do. So those two things are linked together. So they can see it, and they can understand what's going to happen, and what they think is going to happen actually does happen. Final part is that a lot of the time for everyone who's done leadership courses, you'll have had things like CLAP, which is, perfectly good leadership model. You'll have had that thrust into you, that we have to have these things lined up, and we have to think about how we communicate, line of sight, all those different elements. What we noticed within the study was that a lot of people were giving kind of very stock answers to what was going on because they'd done it in a training course and then they'd gone, well, that's what you do. So I'm going to try and replicate that every time I'm out with a group, rather than going, okay, actually clap isn't a rule, clap's a principle. And what I need to be able to do is be a bit adaptable with it, because sometimes I need some flexibility with certain parts. So if we're quite adaptable with our thinking when it comes to those leadership styles, and we can meet the group's needs, like Vicky said before, or meet the environmental needs, whatever it is. If we're adaptable, well, then that's going to lead to better awareness and therefore better decisions for us as well. Any questions about those three things before I push on? That was quite a bit of information I've just thrown at you there. Can you recognise those things within your own leadership?
Hopefully not.
Sorry, not the examples. Do you when you're out with groups, do you look at stuff and go, okay, yeah, it's almost like a sixth sense of what you're seeing going on around you? Is that something that people have, or do they just don't be ashamed to say, and put your hand up and say, yeah, actually, I just have the same sort of style to my leadership all the time, and it works really well. So, why am I going to change it?
Going back to what you were saying earlier, I don't know who said it. Someone said about slowing down. Let's say I'm on a river I know nothing about. Let's just say I've done no homework. So I guess we can all have, I know we shouldn't, but there are times where we might see an observational cue and our perception and action might be lacking because of whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's where we would then have to use the other responses, like you were saying, slowing it down to give you time to get that perception and action and then come up with situational awareness.
Great. Okay. So, really good example. You're in a venue that you don't know and you've never been to before. That's a good solid point you're making there. And we have to say to ourselves, well, actually, a lot of the time in the environments that we work in, then many of the things are quite similar. I'm not saying they're the same, but something. If I notice a water feature, something happening, go back to your example, Alan, on Islay, if I notice something there, it's probably a similar thing that happens on Anglesey that I might see at a given time. And that comes back to you saying before about reflecting on those previous experiences. If I go away and go, I've seen that before, but I have no idea what it was the first time, so I'm never going to have any idea of what it is this time. It's doing something between those two things and engage in that reflective practice between those two experiences. That means that next time you see it, exactly like you're saying, Kristen, you go, okay, yeah, I can see it now. I know what that is. Last time, this is what it looked like. This is what happened. And that starts giving you a bit of a mental model of previous experiences. Now, that's not always a good thing to do, because that could be a trap that you fall into, that you go, well, it was like this last time, so I'll just do the same again this time. And next thing, everyone gets nailed in the back of a cave, and you go, why did that happen? Well, every situation is different, but we've got to be able to go, here are some similarities, and you have to extrapolate a little bit and project, but put things in place just in case things go wrong. But yeah, really good example, going to a venue where where it's unfamiliar, and it's actually going to be a part of the new British Canoeing Leadership review that's happened, and the new awards that are going to be coming out in January. One of the things they're looking at is giving additional support for people who are working in unfamiliar environments. So not just going to the same section of the day every week, but maybe if they take a group to Scotland for the first time, what skills, what knowledge, what understanding do they need to be able to go to a new environment and operate there? Because there's no problem with them doing that, but maybe making that jump for some people is a bit of a big one. It was for me when I first started doing all this, so I guess it is for everybody else too. Yeah, good point. Anything else before I? No? Just shout up if there is. So this links to your point, Alan. This links to your point. What we need to be able to do is we need to be able to get repeated, and that's the important word, repeated exposure to relevant situations. So if you want to lead effectively on a grade 3 river, looking after people on the canal every day it's kayaking, but it's not preparing you for looking after people on a section of grade 3 river. Yeah, it's not going to do that because it's not totally relevant. There are some transferable things, but we need to be getting exposed to relevant situations. In the bottom left-hand corner, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse swinging around there, but if we get more varied and novel experiences, well, then that leads, the research says that what that does is that leads to a better, I put library of options. Some people use the phrase toolbox, but I don't always like that one. But if you get exposed to novel situations that are really varied, well, you build up that bank. And like you were saying then, Kirsten, I keep forgetting, sorry.
Kirsten.
Like you were saying there, when you, Kirsten, I'm going to write it phonetically.
Don't worry, my
There you
auntie's
go.
known me for 40 years. She don't get it right, yeah.
It's all right, Bob. Don't worry. Kirsten, what you were saying was that you go to somewhere new and you see something happening and you go, oh, what's going on here? Well, that's as a result of I'm not saying you do this, but that's as a result of someone not having that variety of novelty within their experiences that they're having. And if you can, in a safe way, get lots of different experiences, well, then not only is it going to concrete that experience better, but it's also then going to give you more options when you get presented with one of those things. The tough thing is, how do we get variety? How do we get novel experiences without it being dangerous? Or if I live in Birmingham and I want to be an advanced sea kayak coach or a leader, well, that's really tough, isn't it? Because there's some scarcity that goes on there. So I can only get over to somewhere with advanced conditions once every 2 or 3 months. So it's hard to generate that experience. I understand that. But if we can do that, it's going to lead to a better library of options, definitely. Another thing, this was meant to be a set of glasses, and I think it looks almost like a set of glasses. Yeah, I think it works. And what we need to do is we need to be open to these observational cues. So saying to ourselves, right, when I'm next out on the river, on the sea, on the canal, on the loch, on wherever I am, on the Broads, wherever it is, that I'm not shutting myself off to all this potential information that's going on. I wouldn't imagine anybody meets a group for the first time and just says, "Hiya, my name's whatever, my name's Matt, get in your boats, come with me, I'm going to take you there." No one does that, do they? You all spend time talking to the group, finding out what their wants and needs are, maybe doing some exercises where we can gather some information so that we can help us to make some decisions and judgments about where we're going to go and we might need. We definitely are open to gaining information doing that. So we should be open to gaining information about the environment and the people who work in when we're on water. Basically making yourself open to what's going on. So being proactive when you go out and saying, right, let's see if I can spot all these different things that are going on, and let's see if I can get an understanding as to what I'm seeing and what the consequence and what the result might be if I engage in activity in that particular environment, and work on it as well. So if you're out with other peers from the club or fellow leaders, or even if you're out with your groups, it's often a really nice exercise to do when you first get with your group. You probably do this anyway, but asking them to talk through, in this case, environmental conditions, because it helps to give you an understanding of where their knowledge level's at. But then it means that you can have this interaction with them and a bit more of a guided experience rather than a led experience where they're going away going, oh, right, okay, maybe I didn't quite understand how these things work, but now that we've had this dialogue and conversation, well, I've got a bit more information about it. So yeah, be open to observational cues and then try and work on recognizing them. Definitely 2 good things to be doing. And another thing is to do this, and it kind of links to the previous one, but practice thinking, which sounds like a really weird thing, but asking yourself these 5 questions, and it hasn't got to be these specific questions, but every time you see something and you maybe pick up on an observational cue, ask yourself, well, all right, I've seen it, but what does it mean? Why is it happening? Now, what's going to happen next? What am I going to do about it? And then what am I then going to do as a result of the answers to all those previous questions? If you can ask yourself a set of questions like that every time you see something, and it could happen really quick, or it could be Alan was talking about verbalizing it like they do with Advanced Driver. And I was saying that it's something that I've done with groups before. We call it thinking aloud. So ask them to say it out loud what's going on, and it helps them to gain that better understanding of what's going on in the environment. And if they're unsure, or if you're unsure, well, because you've spoken it out loud, you're more likely to remember it. The research shows that if we think out loud and talk out loud, when we reflect at a later date, we're more likely to remember what actually happened as opposed to what we think happened. So if you go away and you say, I actually have no idea what that particular feature is on that river or why it's happening, well, that should ring some sort of bell in your head that you go, right, I need to go and find out, because if I don't know, that could be useful information, or it might be irrelevant information, but I need to know which one it is to be able to rule it in or rule it out. So go away and say to yourself, right, I'm going to ask myself these questions. What does it mean? Why is it happening? Now what? What am I going to do? And what next? If you do that, it's going to really help with your recognition and your awareness of the situation that's going on around you. And that is me done. I would have almost had it done in that hour time. So I'm sorry I've gone over a touch there. But I'm more than happy to take any questions, and to, even if it's stuff that we've already talked about and you haven't quite got the answer you want, feel free to ask. And we've got everyone here has got experience, so feel free, if you've got opinions or thoughts in relation to someone else's question, then let's have some inter-dialogue as well. It hasn't got to be just me to you. So any thoughts or any questions about the stuff that we've looked at tonight?
Yeah, I've got a thought. Just going to that last slide, and you were talking about like thinking aloud and stuff.
Yes.
Reminded me of what me and my old boss used to do when we were working at height and accessing on the ropes courses, and we sounded absolutely mad, but we'd be talking through every step that we were doing, and it turned into chunter sometimes, but it was really useful for buddy checks. So if he was going up and I was his ground support, it'd be whiffling away to himself, talking through every step he was doing, but then I'd be like, whoa, hang on a minute, you've forgotten something. So it was really useful. We could then step in with each other and go, stop a sec, you haven't thought about this, or don't forget that, or what do you mean you're doing this, where has this come from, type thing. It was really, really useful.
Great. So you were kind of like self-checking each other and monitoring each other, but because it wasn't just in your own mind, then you were able to know what he was thinking, and he was able to know what you were thinking.
Well, yeah, and he was also like 15-20 meters up in the air, so it's quite hard to see what he was doing at certain points.
Good point. Yeah, you've got, that's a really good point. That you're not able to always see, so hearing what's going on, useful. Nice one, Vicky. I like that.
It also gave you a good cue when to duck, because if he said, right, I'm going to get the whatever it is out of my tool bag, and full well that's not attached to anything right now, you'd be like, I'm just going to move away for a minute right now, let you get on with it.
Oh shit, that means move out of the way. Yeah. Great stuff. Thank you. Thanks for that, Vicky. Any other thoughts from anyone or questions?
It's a stupid, simple one, but sometimes giving participants a chance to abstractly represent how they feel without being too committed.
Sorry,
Something else is breaking.
There's some other audio somewhere that's.
I think it's Craig's, because his box keeps lighting up.
Sorry, Alan, go on. Ask me that question or make that point again. Sorry, I missed it.
I think Dave's muted me rather than Craig. Thanks, Dave, mate. he's got his discretion going. He's absolutely in the right place. No, it was a stupid, simple one, but it's sometimes situation awareness of your group. Sometimes they find it difficult to represent how they're really feeling, and giving them an abstraction that allows them to do it without actually necessarily compromising themselves or committing themselves. So I quite regularly use the old, well, some people use the hands and the up and down thumbs, but I use the chilies, the 1 or 2 or 3 chilies, and if they're feeling really uncomfortable, they're at 3 chili level, I say, okay, mate, no more Madras, we'll cool it off a bit.
I'm rubbish with spice, Alan, so 1 chili would be enough for me. But
you should come paddling with me then, Matt.
Oh God, I'm rubbish. Okay. Yeah, but that's a really good point. That it comes back to it's been raised several times already this evening, and it's about. And I'm glad it has, because that's what the guiding's all about. It's about interacting with your group, isn't it? And getting an understanding of what the group wants and how they're feeling, and what can you do as the guide to give them the best experience. It's not about you having the best time and they've just got to come along for the ride. And you're their guide. They're not your guidees, are they? You're trying to give them the best experience possible. So anything that involves the group has got to be a good thing. It's got to be. And if they go away knowing a bit more as a result of it and having a good time, well, that's a bonus. Because they're probably gonna, not that everyone's doing it commercially, but if people have a good time and come away learning something and then go and have their own adventures, well, actually they'll probably come back to you to go and do something new or something a little bit more challenging, because they have a bit of trust and faith in the way you operate. So yeah, I'm all for being collaborative with the group. Definitely, really good point. Anything else? No, that's really good. I'm sure you can get access to my email through Dave. So if in a week's time you go, actually, I'd really like to ask that question, it might be that you can talk about it within your groups, and if not, then feel free to drop me an email. I'm sure that Dave can share that information out with you, and pass those bits on. I'll also make sure that you get access to some of the documents that I've got available, and if you want a copy of these slides just for an aid memoir, then I'll make sure that's included in it as well. If you're super keen and you're thinking, actually, I'm liking this sort of stuff, then the guy who I work with, Nick, we've just created this little platform. We're calling them essential members because the company's called Kayak Essentials. Trying to get a monopoly on the word essential, and we've basically got a bank of resources, constantly updating, been everything from technical videos, instructional technical videos, through to stuff on decision making, judgment, on coaching, leadership, guiding, all those different things, written articles, podcasts, and also videos. We're doing that for, I think it's with the VAT, it's £3.60 a month. It's the price of a posh access to all of this, all these resources on a special website. And we're constantly adding new things. So if you think, actually, kind of like some of the stuff we were talking about, well, there's a lot more to be found on there. So, go and have a little look, have a browse around on our Kayak Essentials website and take a look at our members area, and it might be of interest to you. But obviously, if it's not, no problem at all.
This was a With Dave production.